Samuel Carter grew up at the far edge of the Central Valley, in a narrow, sun-faded trailer that shook every time a truck roared down the highway. Summers were scorching, winters felt like damp concrete, and privacy was a luxury nobody in his family could afford. His mother, Linda Carter, slept on a fold-out couch by the kitchen. His siblings, his sharp-minded older sister, Maria, and his restless younger brother, Eric, shared a bunk built into the plywood wall. Samuel slept on a thin mattress on the floor, close enough to the hallway that he could hear every step, cough, argument, or midnight whisper. Their father, Jim, walked out when Samuel was 9. He didn't leave a note, only a half-used pack of cigarettes on the counter and a slammed door. Linda found out 2 days later from a neighbor that he had moved in with a woman from the next town over. After that, Linda took on every extra shift a supermarket could give: cashier, bagger, shelf stocker, freezer attendant. She came home with swollen feet, red knuckles, and the kind of exhausted stare that only single parents master. Despite all this, Samuel and Maria fought their way into their futures. Maria earned a scholarship to UCLA and later became a lawyer in Phoenix. Samuel earned his bachelor's degree in marketing through a scholarship he almost missed because the acceptance letter got stuck under a stack of unpaid bills. Eric, the youngest, drifted. School wasn't his place, jobs didn't stick, and he bounced between friends' garages, temporary gigs, and short bursts of enthusiasm that evaporated just as quickly as they came. But Samuel believed each sibling deserved their own path. At first, in 1985, when he was only 24, Samuel landed a job at a rising California tech company in San Mateo, Sinvista Online Services. It was small, scrappy, and obsessed with the emerging world of internet connectivity long before most Americans had even touched a computer. Samuel thrived there. He moved from junior marketer to full manager in 3 years, then to director. 16 years later, Sinvista was bought by Titan Media Group, one of the world's largest digital conglomerates, and Samuel found himself appointed vice president of marketing. The buyout came with stock options, a generous severance package, and bonuses that changed everything. He paid off Linda's debts, bought her a small house in Roseville, refurnished every room, stocked both fridges, hers and the trailer's, with food she'd never been able to afford, and then boarded planes to places he had only read about as a kid: Bali, Tokyo, Lisbon, Vancouver. And that's where life tricked him. Wealth brought attention. Attention brought Tiffany. She arrived like a golden wave, smiling, laughing at all the right moments, always perfectly dressed, always complimenting Samuel's hard work and ambition. She told him she admired his discipline, his story, his resilience. Her own past was a fog of half-truths and inconsistencies, but her presence felt intoxicating. She was, as Samuel would later realize, a trophy wife in the oldest sense, attracted not to him, but to the safety and glitter of his success. They married fast, too fast. She moved into his Redwood City condo, then convinced him to upgrade to a larger property in Menlo Park. She drove his cars, used his cards, entertained his colleagues, and soon gave birth to a son they named Paul Jr. Samuel loved that boy, or at least he believed he did. Everything changed when Paul Jr. turned 4. Tiffany's inconsistencies multiplied. Overnight business trips, suspicious text messages, secretive calls answered only in bathrooms or the backyard. Samuel denied his instincts for a long time, until one evening he overheard a conversation Tiffany had meant to end before entering the living room. "He'll never know," she whispered. "Eric keeps quiet. He owes me." Samuel froze. Eric? His brother Eric? He confronted her. She denied everything. She gaslit him, cried, accused him of paranoia, blamed work stress and his tendency to dramatize things. But suspicion is a seed that never dies once planted. Samuel took a private DNA test, him and Paul Jr. The result arrived in a thin envelope. Probability of paternity, 0%. The biological father, almost certainly a first-degree relative. He didn't need a second test. He knew. Eric, his own brother. The betrayal hollowed him out from the inside, like rot moving through wood. Tiffany cried again, begged, then admitted the truth in fragments, never fully, never cleanly. Eric disappeared. Maria tried to mediate. Linda suggested giving the marriage another chance. Samuel felt something inside him snap the moment he heard those words. He filed for divorce. He sold the Menlo Park house. He liquidated assets Tiffany had no legal claim to. He packed a few suitcases, wired Maria money to take care of their mother, and drove out of California without telling anyone where he was going. He ended up in New Mexico. Albuquerque was dry, open, and wonderfully impersonal. Nobody cared who Samuel was, or what he used to be, or who had slept with whom. The anonymity felt like a blanket he had never realized he needed. He bought a restored 1974 Volkswagen Transporter, light blue, polished interior, and started living in a cheap roadside motel. He ate at diners, answered no calls except for Maria, and slowly taught his mind to breathe again. Then he found a mobile home park on the east side of town. It was modest, sun-worn, and quiet. The residents were the kind who nodded instead of talking, and Samuel liked that. He rented a one-room trailer with peeling paint and old linoleum floors. It wasn't much, but it was his new world, clean, empty, and free. That's where he met Aurora Santos. She lived 3 trailers down with her 8-year-old son, Jacob. Aurora had warm eyes, tired but gentle. She wore her long dark hair in a braid down her back, and she always seemed to be carrying groceries, laundry, or some responsibility that belonged to someone else. She told Samuel her ex-husband was in prison for domestic violence. She told him she worked double shifts at a community clinic. She told him Jacob loved dinosaurs and hated math. And somehow, Samuel started helping them. He didn't know exactly when it started. Maybe when he saw her struggling with 3 grocery bags and a laundry basket. Maybe when he heard Jacob crying after scraping his knee. Maybe when Aurora knocked on his door just to offer him warm tortillas because she accidentally made too many. Maybe because Aurora, in all her exhaustion, never pretended, never hid anything, never lied. She was the first honest presence he had encountered in years. One evening, she invited him to her home, a modest but cozy trailer filled with drawings, mismatched cushions, and the smell of adobo simmering on the stove. Jacob sat on the floor playing with plastic dinosaurs while Aurora talked about her life, her fears, her hopes. And Samuel realized he wasn't thinking about Tiffany for the first time in months. Aurora trusted him. Jacob adored him. Samuel didn't ask for it, didn't expect it, but their small home became a sanctuary where he could finally exist without pain. Soon Samuel was watching Jacob when Aurora worked overtime. They exchanged spare keys just in case. When Samuel caught a bad flu, Aurora brought soup, humidifiers, and blankets. She even sat by his bed and brushed his hair from his forehead like someone who cared more than she should. One afternoon, they were in a local grocery store when a rude cashier mocked Aurora's accent. Samuel stepped in instantly, fire rising in his chest. "Watch your tone," he said calmly. "She's with me." Aurora froze. The cashier backed off, and Samuel realized that he meant those words more than he intended to. Later, as they walked home, Aurora asked quietly, "Why did you say I was with you?" And Samuel answered without hesitation, "Because I wouldn't mind if it were true." Aurora blushed, stared at the sidewalk, and didn't say anything for a long moment. But she didn't pull her hand away when Jacob slipped his fingers into Samuel's palm. There, under the orange New Mexico sunset, something shifted. Something fragile, something delicate, something new. And that's where everything truly began. Aurora didn't ask questions when I came back from California, quietly shaken. Though I knew she felt the storm inside me. She had that intuition, the kind that wasn't loud or demanding but tender, observant, and patient. She simply put a warm plate of arroz caldo in front of me, touched my wrist gently, and whispered, "Eat first. Talk later." But I couldn't talk. Not yet. The meeting with my family had cracked open an old wound I thought I'd stitched up with relocation, distance, and a brand new life. Seeing Tiffany again, seeing my sister Janet defending her, seeing my mother hesitate, it shook me far deeper than I was prepared for. Even the sight of my nephew, Paul Jr., who now understood far more than a child should, pierced through me. I wasn't ready to unpack it in words. So I spent the evening helping Jacob with homework, listening to Aurora hum as she cleaned the kitchen, and letting myself breathe normally again. But at night, when she went home, I sat alone in the trailer with the lights off, staring at the engagement ring on her finger, the symbol of everything new, and realizing just how fragile my peace still was. A past that refused to die. New Mexico should have been far enough. I bought a beat-up Volkswagen Transporter. I lived in a sunburnt trailer park. I met a woman unlike anyone I'd met before, a woman who didn't judge, didn't demand, didn't manipulate. Yet somehow, my past managed to trip over every state line and land right in our laps. The next morning, Aurora knocked and stepped inside with a bag of fresh tortillas and coffee. Jacob ran to my knees and hugged me, and the tightness around my chest loosened just a little. "Are you okay?" Aurora asked softly. "I will be," I answered. She gave me a look, patient, gentle, the opposite of Tiffany's sharpness and fire. Aurora never forced feelings out of me. She simply made space for them. "Do you want to go to Mass with us today?" she asked. "We'll pray for peace in your heart." It wasn't my ritual. I wasn't religious by upbringing. But her voice made it feel less like a ritual and more like a refuge. "Yeah," I said. "I'd like that." Jacob grinned. "Can we get donuts after?" Aurora rolled her eyes, but laughed. "Only if he behaves." "I'm 39, I protested. "You do not always behave," she shot back playfully. And for the first time in 2 days, I genuinely laughed. Church, peace, and a flicker of hope. Mass was simple, calm, warm. A small white chapel on the edge of town, where sunlight spilled through the stained glass and painted soft colors across the pews. Aurora held my hand carefully, like she wanted to make sure I stayed grounded. Jacob leaned against me during the sermon, half asleep because he always got bored halfway through. There were moments, brief but powerful, where I imagined a future that was actually peaceful. A future where my past didn't chase me. Where Tiffany and her lies were nothing more than faded memories. Where my brother's betrayal stopped echoing in my ribs. Where the child I once believed was mine didn't bring a stabbing pain every time I remembered the truth. Aurora whispered during the prayer, "For healing." I didn't open my eyes, but I squeezed her hand. For the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe healing wasn't impossible. Trouble has a way of finding you. Peace lasted less than a week. It was early morning when someone banged on my trailer door so loudly that Aurora, who'd spent the night, jolted awake beside me. I thought it was Jacob at first. He had a habit of knocking like a little drummer boy when excited. But the voice on the other side wasn't a kid's. It was a woman's. A familiar one. I froze. Aurora looked at me. "Do you know who that is?" "Yeah," I whispered. "Edo." The banging grew louder. "Paul, open the door. I know you're in there." "Tiffany." My blood went cold. I opened the door just enough to stand there, and there she was. Perfect hair, designer sunglasses, expensive coat, the same polished look she always had, even when she was in the middle of ruining lives. "What are you doing here?" I asked flatly. She barged inside without waiting for an invitation. Aurora stiffened. Jacob peeked out from the doorway of the small bedroom. "Wow," Tiffany said, scanning the cramped trailer with a curled lip. "So, this is where you've been hiding? How rustic. What do you want?" I repeated. She pulled off her sunglasses and stared at me with a familiar mixture of entitlement and panic. "It's Eric," she said. My stomach dropped. "My brother. The man who slept with my wife behind my back and fathered the child I raised." "What about him?" "He's missing." I blinked, not because I cared, but because I didn't understand why she thought I should. "And," I asked, "and you need to help find him." I almost laughed, a harsh, sharp, bitter sound. "You want me to help the man who destroyed my marriage?" "You're his brother," she snapped. "Family takes care of family." Aurora stepped closer, protective, stern. "Family doesn't do what he did." Tiffany glared at her. "Who exactly are you?" "The woman he loves," Aurora answered calmly. "And the mother of the child he's raising as his own." Tiffany blinked rapidly, stunned. I added quietly, "We're getting married." Everything in Tiffany's expression froze. Not sadness, not jealousy, but something darker, the realization that she'd lost control of me forever. She muttered, "Congratulations," though the words sounded like poison on her tongue. Then she stepped closer and whispered, "If Eric doesn't come back, you might want to prepare yourself. There are things you don't know yet." I felt a cold sensation crawl up my spine. "What does that mean?" She didn't answer. She simply left. Aurora locked the door behind her, then turned to me slowly. "What did she mean by things you don't know yet?" I swallowed. "I don't know," I said. But I did know. Tiffany never said anything unless it was designed to hurt. And this time, it felt like she wasn't finished hurting me. Secrets have a way of rotting through lives. For days I tried to ignore Tiffany's warning. But something gnawed at me. A sense of something unfinished. Unsolved. I knew Eric. I knew his patterns. He was charming, irresponsible, self-destructive, and easily manipulated, especially by women who fed his ego. Tiffany knew exactly how to use him, and for years, I'd been blind to it. But now, he was gone, vanished, and reality twisted in my chest. Maybe I wasn't just angry. Maybe I was scared, not for him, but for what his disappearance meant. Aurora tried to soothe me. "You can't let them back into your life," she whispered one night, stroking my hair as we lay together on her couch. "I'm not," I said quietly, "but I need to know what's going on." "Why?" "Because I don't want something from that old life to ruin our new one." She understood. She always understood. "What if," she whispered, "Eric's disappearance has nothing to do with you at all?" I shook my head. "No." Tiffany came straight to me. "That means she knows something or fears something that ties back to what she and Eric did." Aurora sighed, worry clouding her eyes. "So what are you going to do?" I hesitated. "I'm going to find out what happened." A trip back into the fire. I didn't tell Tiffany I was coming. I simply drove through Arizona into California, heading back to the very place I swore I'd never return to, the place where everything had fallen apart, Fresno. I stopped at my sister Janet's house first. She opened the door in shock. "Paul, what are you doing here?" "I need to know what's going on with Eric," I said. Her expression darkened. "He owes money," she whispered. "A lot of money." "To who?" She swallowed hard. "To the wrong people." My stomach tightened. "And Tiffany? What does she want from me?" Janet hesitated, then leaned closer. She said, "If anything happened to Eric, you're going to be dragged into it." I felt ice slide through my veins. Drag into it? Why? What had my brother gotten himself tangled in? Before I could ask, my phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. "Come to the old warehouse on Belmont." Alone. My pulse hammered. Aurora's voice echoed in my mind. "Don't let your past ruin your new life." But it was too late to turn back. I had to know. A meeting in the dark. The warehouse was abandoned. Rusted walls. Broken windows. Dust swirling in the fading light. I stepped inside cautiously. A figure stood in the shadows. Not Eric. Not Tiffany. A man I didn't recognize. "Paul Carter?" he asked. "Yes." He stepped forward. "I'm here to deliver a message," he said quietly. "Your brother made promises he couldn't keep." My chest tightened. "Is he alive?" I demanded. The man paused. "For now." My heart lurched. "What do you want from me?" He smirked faintly. "The truth. About Tiffany. About the boy. About everything." A colder fear gripped me, deeper than anything I'd felt even when the DNA test destroyed my marriage. "What truth?" I whispered. The man slipped a small envelope into my hand and stepped back. "Everything you think you know is only half the story." And then he vanished out the side door, leaving me alone, holding an envelope, a single name written on the front. Aurora. My stomach dropped. Why Aurora? What did she have to do with any of this? Hands shaking, I ripped the envelope open. Inside were three things. A photograph, a birth certificate, and a handwritten note. The note read only two words. "Ask her." My world tilted. What truth had Aurora been hiding? The days that followed blurred together into a strange, heavy fog. I wasn't eating well, I wasn't sleeping well, and I wasn't speaking to Lena more than necessary. On the surface, to anyone watching, we probably looked like a normal couple going through some busy weeks. But underneath, My mind was slicing every minute of the past 10 years into thin strips and re-examining each of them under harsh, bright light. The therapist's words echoed in my skull more times than I wanted to admit. Trust doesn't rebuild itself. It must be rebuilt. But how do you rebuild something when you aren't even sure it ever existed in the first place? Every night, after Lena fell asleep, I lay awake listening to her breathing, sometimes calm and steady, sometimes uneven, restless. I wondered endlessly, is she dreaming about him? Was she ever fully mine? Were any of the ones we called our memories actually shared? Or was she living a double life even then? I didn't want to think like that, but I couldn't stop. The more I tried to push the suspicion away, the louder it came roaring back. A strange behavior in the house. One afternoon, I came home early from work. Lena didn't hear me enter. From the hallway, I saw her sitting at the dining table with her laptop open. Her posture was stiff, her shoulders tense, the way someone sits when reading something they don't want to be seen. I was about to walk in and casually announce I was home when she whispered something to herself. I froze, not because the words were loud, but because they were quiet. So quiet she must have thought no one would ever hear. Please, not again. Her fingers trembled as she hovered over an email. She closed the laptop fast, pressed her palms to her face, and let out a broken exhale. Something inside me said, she's hiding something, and it's not small. I stepped back before she noticed me. My heart pounded. I wasn't ready for another confrontation. Not yet. Not without leverage. Not without clarity. But the image of her trembling hands lingered behind my eyelids like a dark stain. Ryan's return. A week later, my brother showed up again. I knew he wanted to keep checking on me. But part of me also sensed he didn't fully trust Lena being alone with me. Like he feared I'd either explode or implode. Let's get out, Ryan said. Just the two of us. We drove for nearly an hour in silence, ending up near an abandoned overlook, one of those places teenagers used to go to drink or smoke. There, under the dim, orange glow of the setting sun, Ryan finally spoke. You look worse, he said. You're not handling this well. No shit, I snapped. What did you expect? I found out my entire foundation might be built on lies. Ryan didn't yell back, didn't even flinch. He just looked at me with that quiet intensity older brothers sometimes have. Sam, he said, if you want the truth, you're going to have to do something about it instead of waiting for it to magically reveal itself. I knew what he meant. He meant DNA. He meant opening every door I'd nailed shut. He meant risking the possibility that the truth might be worse than the suspicion. But he didn't say it outright. He let the idea hover between us like a serpent waiting for someone to grab its tail. Whatever you decide, Ryan continued, I'll help you, even if it destroys you for a while. His sincerity almost broke something inside me, something old and fragile. As kids, Ryan and I were close, but adulthood had pulled us apart. Now he was the only person keeping me from drowning. Thanks, I murmured. It sounded small, but it was all I could manage. The therapist's pivot. At our next session, the therapist changed her approach entirely. She didn't ask about trust or communication exercises. She didn't ask us to recount conflicts. Instead, she leaned back, crossed her legs slowly, and studied us like we were pieces of a puzzle she'd been trying to solve. Samuel, she said calmly, if your wife told you the full truth today, would you leave her? I blinked. I don't know. You don't know because you don't have the truth, she said. Then she turned to Lena. And you, if your husband knew the truth, the whole truth, what is the worst thing that could happen? Lena's throat tightened visibly. Her eyes darted down, away from the therapist, away from me. Her breath hitched. I don't want to lose my family, she whispered. I don't want to lose everything. Then you must tell the truth, the therapist said, or it will destroy the very thing you're trying to protect. Lena looked at me. Her eyes were wet, full of dread, but she didn't speak. Not a single word. And in that silence, I heard everything I needed to hear. Whatever she was hiding wasn't something accidental or minor. It was something enormous, something deliberate, something that could shatter our entire marriage beyond repair. I clenched my jaw and looked away. I felt a shift inside me, subtle, slow, but inevitable. The shift from hope to preparation, from trying to rebuild to getting ready to uncover. My own private investigation. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I paced the living room until the floorboards creaked under my feet. I went through old photographs, reread old messages, replayed memories looking for cracks I'd missed. Patterns emerged. Small inconsistencies. Unexplained absences. Moments I once brushed off as harmless. Piece by piece, they formed a mosaic I didn't want to accept but couldn't deny. I knew what I had to do. I made appointments. I prepared the documents. I set plans in motion quietly, methodically, like someone stepping into a role they never wanted but were destined to play. The breaking point. 2 days later, I found Lena sitting on the edge of our bed, staring at her phone with swollen eyes. When she saw me, she quickly wiped her face and tried to force a weak smile. "I made dinner," she said softly. "Your favorite." Her voice cracked on the last word. Something inside me, something small, soft, remaining, felt a flicker of sympathy. But another part of me had already crossed a point of no return. I sat beside her, leaving a few inches of space between us. "Lena," I said, "are you ready to tell me what's going on?" Her lips parted, then closed. She shook her head, tears threatening again. "I can't. Not yet. Then I'll find out myself," I said quietly. Her breath caught in her throat. "Sam, please don't." But I was already standing up. "I'm done waiting," I said. "The truth is coming out, one way or another." She didn't chase me, didn't argue, didn't beg. She just curled into herself, sobbing silently, as I walked out of the room and closed the door behind me. A storm on the horizon. I stepped outside, stood on the porch, and inhaled the cold night air. My stomach churned. My hands shook. This wasn't strength. This wasn't empowerment. This was fear. Raw, primal fear of what the truth might be. But beneath the fear, there was something else, something sharper. Determination. Resolve. A growing fire. Whatever Lena was hiding, whatever she thought she could bury with tears and silence, I would find it. And when I did, there would be no turning back. No matter what the truth is, I thought, I'll face it. The night around me was quiet, still deceptively calm. But inside my chest, a storm had already begun. And I knew the next steps I took would decide everything. The future of our marriage, our family, our lives. The morning after I told Lena I would uncover everything on my own, the house felt different. Heavier, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting. Lena barely looked at me. She moved around me like a ghost, silent, fragile, trembling. Every time our eyes nearly met, she flinched. She knew the storm was coming. She sensed that whatever I'd set in motion wasn't something she could stop with tears or pleas. And she was right. That afternoon, when I got in my car, I didn't head to work. I drove to the clinic. The envelopes were already prepared. The samples discreetly handled. The process underway. All that was left was waiting for the truth. The anxiety before impact. Over the next few days, everything felt unreal. I performed my job mechanically, nodded through conversations, went through routines like an actor following a script. None of it sank in. At night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Lena quietly cried beside me. Sometimes she whispered, "I'm sorry," when she thought I was asleep. Sometimes she said nothing, just curled into a ball like someone bracing for a verdict. The strange part? I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the explosive, blinding way I had been in the beginning. The anger had cooled into something colder, sharper, more dangerous. Clarity. For the first time, I wasn't drowning in emotion. I was preparing, and that terrified me, because calm isn't always peace. Sometimes calm is the silence before the avalanche. The results. 3 days later, the clinic called. The moment I heard the words, "Your results are ready," my body went numb. The drive there felt like watching someone else's life through a tinted window. When the envelope was placed into my hands, it felt heavier than paper should, as if it carried the weight of 10 years. I walked back to my car, sat inside, locked the doors, and held the envelope for a long minute, staring at my shaking hands. Then I opened it. The first line hit me like a brick to the chest. Probability of paternity, 0%. I felt the world tilt. The air vanished from my lungs. Everything around me dissolved into a ringing, suffocating silence. I flipped to the next page. Same result. Then the next. Same. I wasn't their father. Not biologically. Not even by coincidence. All three. Zero. 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 The kind of zero that doesn't just erase the present. It reaches back and erases the past. The memories. The moments. The meaning. For a long time, I didn't move. I sat there with the pages trembling in my grip as my vision blurred and a deep, bone-level coldness spread through me. There it was. The truth Lena was too afraid to say. The truth I had feared, yet chased anyway. The truth that shattered everything. The drive home. I don't remember starting the engine. I don't remember half the drive. I only remember gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white and my nails dug into the leather. My jaw ached from clenching. A single sentence beat inside my skull like a war drum. She knew. She knew. She knew. Not a mistake. Not a one-time slip. Not confusion. This was planned. Long-term. Repeated. Systematic. A double life that lasted years. And then, quietly, another thought emerged. He knew too. The biological father. The man who lived in the shadow of my family. Taking what wasn't his without ever facing consequences. Not anymore. My vision sharpened. My heartbeat steadied. Something inside me crystallized. I wasn't going home to ask questions. I wasn't going home to cry. I wasn't going home to negotiate. I was going home for answers. And consequences. The confrontation. When I entered the house, Lena was in the kitchen stirring a pot of soup. She turned, startled, and froze when she saw the envelope in my hand. Her lips parted. Her eyes widened. All the blood drained from her face. "No," she whispered. "Sam, please." I set the papers on the counter. Not gently. Her legs wobbled. She grabbed the edge of the counter to steady herself. "Say it," I said quietly. She shook her head frantically. "Sam, I can explain." "Say it." Tears streamed down her cheeks. Her shoulders collapsed. "They're not yours," she whispered, voice cracking. I'm so sorry." The words hung there like poison. I didn't react, didn't shout, didn't move. Silence stretched between us until it hurt. "How long?" I asked. She closed her eyes. "Since the beginning." It felt like a knife twisting in my chest. "All three?" I asked. She nodded, sobbing. "Yes, all three. I'm so sorry." "Who?" My voice was a whisper of steel. She covered her face. She couldn't say it. So I stepped closer, took her wrists gently, pulled her hands down so she had to look at me. "Who is he?" Her lips trembled. "Eric," she whispered. My vision darkened at the edges. Eric, her co-worker, the man I once invited to our house for barbecues. The man I shook hands with. The man who smiled at me while sleeping with my wife and fathering my children. Everything went silent. Finally, I said, "You're going to pack." She blinked, confused. "What?" "You're leaving this house tonight." "Sam, please." "I can't." "Where will I?" "What about the girls?" "They'll stay with me until the legal process decides otherwise. And trust me, once the court sees these results, you won't be getting what you think." She sobbed harder. "Sam, please don't do this. Don't destroy our family." "You destroyed it," I said, voice shaking. "All I'm doing now is cleaning up the wreckage." The plan. Lena didn't know that I wasn't just kicking her out. I had a bigger plan. A plan for Eric. Because if he wanted to be a father so badly, he was about to become one. Completely and entirely. Every piece of Lena's belongings. Every childhood drawing of the kids. Every memory. Every object tied to her secret family with him. All of it was going to be delivered straight to his doorstep. Along with the test results. Along with the photos. Along with the truth she hid from me and him. A package of consequences. A package of reality. A package that would rip apart his life the way he helped rip apart mine. The goodbye. Lena finished packing around midnight. Her eyes were red, swollen, empty. She stood at the doorway, gripping her suitcase like a lifeline. "Sam, please don't let this be the end." "It ended years ago," I said softly. "I just didn't know." She let out a broken sob. Before she stepped out, she whispered, "You were the better man, the better father, the only real one they ever had." I swear that's true. For a second, something inside me clenched. Grief, loss, love, memory, betrayal. But then it loosened. Because even if I had been the better man, even if I had been the real father in every way except biology, she had made her choice. And now I was making mine. The door closed behind her. Aftermath. The house was silent. The kind of silence that feels like aftermath. Like the air after an explosion, still, heavy, scorched. I walked to the dining table, sat down, held the test results in my hands one last time. Then I exhaled, slow and steady. Pain didn't disappear, but something else took root in its place. Strength, clarity, direction. Tomorrow I would call a lawyer. Tomorrow I would send the package to Eric. Tomorrow the real reckoning would begin. But tonight was the first night in years that I felt something unusual. A strange, fragile, unfamiliar feeling. Freedom.